Well, welcome back, and I hope that many of you have been enjoying the chance to speak face-to-face with the admissions directors from INSEAD, from IMD, from ESMT, and from Imperial. As we said, this particular CentreCourt event in February is focusing on alumni, the extraordinary diversity. Already yesterday, I was just blown away by the caliber, by the thoughtfulness, by that eclectic diversity of candidates, and no different on the next panel, as you will see as I present each of the wonderful guests that we have. Starting with Yizhen Fung. Yizhen studied law at Oxford University. She worked for the Securities Commission in Malaysia for over 4 years. So it was a smaller step for Yizhen then to join this wonderful pioneer program with the Asia School of Business and MIT Sloan. Yizhen is now the advisor to the CEO at Air Asia. And we did ask her how the coffee was. There's a theme to this because our next panelist, Felix Artmann, many years ago, looking for a good cup of coffee, actually had a Kickstarter project for a great roast grind brew coffee, all just part of the background that he brought when applying to the MBA program at Darden. He was also at Tiburon, which is a seed investment fund, and now has come out of Darden, has not lost any of that entrepreneurial flair, and is the co-founder of Gifts app. And we look forward to finding out a lot more about how Darden helped you to shape your subsequent post-MBA startup plans. Ravi Mcnuru, an engineer from Osmania who went all the way through to a doctorate studying in the Netherlands at Eindhoven. Ravi had worked at Lotus Partners on deep science. You're going to have to tell me more about deep science and PET scanners, but also nuclear power, and a wonderfully European background that he had working with Spain, Netherlands, the German market. So perhaps natural that he'd end up at a school like IESE in Barcelona, has emerged and is now a senior program management at Amazon. And though the financial markets are going up and down, we're delighted that Gabriel could step away from the role that he has at Goldman Sachs. Io is an executive director for private wealth management, did his economics degree at Queen Mary, and 5 years with Thomson Reuters before those 2 very happy years, I'm sure, in Regent's Park. So thank you, all 4 of you, for joining us for this panel. And perhaps just I've given a brief intro to your backgrounds. Yizhen, apart from where you worked and where you studied, what is that fun fact about yourself that isn't on the resume?
Oh, wow. Well, thank you so much, Matt, for the very kind introduction. Very thrilled to be here tonight. It's midnight where I am right now. Okay, so a fun fact about me, I am a freelance mixologist. I specialize in gin-based cocktails for private events, and I have more than 100 bottles of gin.
Wow, that's a great collection that you've just this the start of the collection. So clearly, from coffee to gin, we're covering the start of the day and then cocktail hour. Felix, they always say that entrepreneurs are looking to solve problems. That seems to have been part of your background. And how did you get started making coffee?
That was actually through sports. I was an avid field hockey player. Now I'm maybe too old for that, and got to know a friend there, and he was in the coffee business. Never letting it go since then. I'll tell you my fun fact too, because as a German, I feel like I have to mention that I can open a Crown Cork bottle with almost anything. So that I'm somehow all about food, drinks, gifts, and startups in general.
Hey, if you end up working in something that you love, it's hardly like work at all, right? And I'll remember you at the next picnic that you're the one that can use his teeth to open those bottles.
I will do my best.
Ravi, you're now based in Luxembourg and have this what an international adventure since you first studied engineering in Osmania. Did you see Europe in your future?
Oh yeah. So I definitely had it on my mind, mainly because of the kind of quality of education and the quality of programs that I was aiming for. So it was sort of a long-term planning underway.
Io, you said you daren't admit publicly just how much coffee you all drink at Goldman Sachs. Again, just like Yizhen, what is not on the resume? One of those fun facts about yourself.
And I mean, I'm glad to have met Felix, because I'm taking him up on his offer for coffee. I think that's very much me. And then, you know, we've got gin, we've got coffee now. I think, you know, if we're going to have a picnic, we need music. So actually, growing up, big avid fan of musical production, if you like. So I played 4 musical instruments growing up, which included the sort of piano, drums, very basic acoustic guitar and bass, and almost surprisingly 5 years playing the trumpet, which I can tell you is too loud to practice in any household, but actually makes for a great addition for most bands. So we've got ourselves a full, you know, picnic here, if you like. So that's my fun fact.
So among all of those bankers, consultants, engineers that are attracted to a school like London Business School, were there many musicians?
Do you know what? There were, and there were actually a few bands. So more than one band, I'd say. And we had the privilege, every Thursday, there's a theme called Sundowners, which is a student-run activity. And on Thursday evenings for 2 hours, there are free beers. So on the topic of beers, Felix, free beers for all students and actually partners on campus. And we would typically have a band performance from a student band as well, to the point where they even rival bands almost out-banding each other. So yeah, very much a diverse population in the school.
I'm sure that that vibrant network was part of the decision to choose LBS. But I mean, why pursue an MBA given the successful career you're enjoying?
So agreed, and I mean, I'll speak to the community. I think, I mean, and they say when you go to business school, you're choosing, you know, to sort of take on an MBA at any school. Really, it's to either change, you know, function, geography, or just to transition into a new role or to a new network. And I think for me, it was to do all three. And initially, it was, I'm from London, born in London. Everyone said, why didn't you travel abroad? And I said, well, you know, I quite like to come back and work here full time, but I still want that international exposure. And when I looked across the business schools, and the numbers spoke for itself. You know, as a Brit in a British school, we were a minority, and we were less than 10% of the cohort. And I was interested in banking, and that was always the end goal for me. But just being on the doorstep of so many international companies meant networking was something you could do in between, you know, lectures. Very much, you know, future employers could come to campus. And when it came to the actual student cohort as well, knowing everyone came from every corner of the world, quite literally, to come to campus, meant actually I had a global experience very much in my home city, while still being able to transition very effectively into banking. So for me, it ticked every box very well. And I think when it came to the community, absolutely, it's from even before applying, the second I spoke to alumni and said, I'm thinking about LBS, it was as if I was already part of the school. And that carries all the way through to being in the school. And as an alumni now, people ask me, why do you spend so much time helping me? And I'm like, well, you have no idea what the alumni did for me on the way in. So it's just a strong community feel.
Here are all 4 of you as wonderful ambassadors for your school. Yizhen, you were saying earlier with this tremendous pioneer program, ASB, tying up with MIT Sloan and their Kuala Lumpur campus, that, you know, it was attracting classmates from as far away as Latin America, you know, across Asia, 15 nationalities in the program. You had a law background and already, you know, a successful professional career. So what was it that was the sudden spark that said, this is the right program and it's an MBA for me next?
So that's a very good question, Matt. Allow me to sort of briefly explain a quick background and what motivated me to pursue my ASB MBA. So after graduation from Oxford with my degree in law, I went and tried my hand at legal practice. I realized within the first year that that wasn't quite my cup of tea. And so I decided to work at the government as a policy maker at the Securities Commission Malaysia. I also ended up working as the advisor to the chairman himself, as his principal advisor and speechwriter. And so 5 years into that stint as a regulator and policymaker, I did some reflection. And I realized that while the regulator plays a very noble role in facilitating innovation with their regulatory frameworks, at the end of the day, the true driver of innovation comes from the private sector. And I really wanted to be part of that. Now, the thing with employers in Asia is that when they recruit talent, there is a lot of emphasis on direct working experience or direct industry experience. Meaning to say, if you wanted to get a job in a telecommunications company, they would definitely prioritize people with prior telecommunications industry experience. So for me, it then sort of led to a bit of self-reflection, like, how could I bridge that gap, right? It was a little bit of a catch-22, a chicken and egg question, if you will. And the ASB program was the perfect solution for me because I wasn't tied to any industry or any function. I was flexible. I wanted to explore and validate what my interests would be. And the action learning component at ASB allowed me to do one project at a corporate host for 4 weeks in every semester. So this would amount to 5 projects in 5 different countries over the course of my 20-month program. And there was such tremendous international exposure that in my 20-month duration of my program, I spent about 7 months abroad in total. So that was an absolute blast and very integral in me landing a job outside after graduation.
Yizhen talks about policy making. Felix, I'm reminded of hosting the World Entrepreneurship Forum and someone that stood up and said, it's not politicians that's going to save the world, it's entrepreneurs. Now, you had that very entrepreneurial background and of course, looking at seed investment in fascinating startups, and at the same time had studied business at TUM, the Technological University at München, which is a world-class institution. So why this transatlantic shift and going off for the adventure at Virginia Darden?
Yeah, that was a good intro because I feel like I was kind of an oddball. I studied business as an undergrad, already worked in a kind of business environment and was a little unsure if an MBA could actually help me improve or broaden my horizon. And I kind of felt the curve flatten at the seed fund. You kind of, after a couple of years, figure out how the venture capital industry works. And I always wanted an American campus experience. This is what I was missing at my school back at home. It was quite anonymous and all lecture based. And that's why I was particularly looking for a school that had a very campus, university, town environment. Was only case studies only, and I think there are only 2 schools in the world. It's Harvard and Darden that are 100% case studies. So that was a plus for me, and I actually went to visit to ask myself, can I live here for 2 years? And after being able to answer that with a clear yes, that school was what actually offered what I wanted to do. And I was quite surprised that even the first year was so much more than I had learned in my undergrad studies. And the case study method is a world different from the European system, especially Germany. So that surprised me a lot. The campus experience it's a beautiful campus in Charlottesville. So I can relate to a lot of things that Ayo said about LBS. It feels like a family. It's very supportive. Before, during, and after, I never felt like it was a competition. It was always like everybody's in it together, and everybody wants to get the best out of it. And it actually helped me to do what I was wanting to accomplish, which is broaden my horizon, challenge myself, and then find the guts and the confidence to do something completely on my own after. And this is what I'm still working on. So I think that was a good choice.
Right. Now, in Felix's Germany, Ravi, you would already be Herr Doctor, I guess, with your doctoral studies. So you'd gone through years of academics. It can't have been easy to then say, right, I'm going back to school again, but hey, Barcelona.
Yeah, well, that's definitely one of the factors. But if I now look back, and as you said, yes, being someone coming with such an enormous academic backgrounds and an experience, I was quite content, to be honest, in where I was, what I was doing in my job in the Netherlands, doing nuclear physics R&D as an engineer. And it was actually not until my wife who pointed out, that there is some potential beyond what you think about yourself. So you should probably try out something else. I was actually really reluctant and hesitant to do it, because it was this kind of academic arrogance that you think of. What else could academia teach me more than what I've probably already learned, right? And then it completely, all this is completely busted. All these myths are busted once I finish my MBA and embarked on this journey. And in terms of being where I was at ESA, I had three key factors that went into my selection criteria. So first one was that I definitely wanted to be in a 2-year program. Because given my background, for me, a 1-year one would have been quite short, and I definitely wanted to have a summer internship experience for obvious reasons. The second was that it had to be a European school, given, let's say, the relatively higher international diversity in the European ones compared to the American counterparts. And the third one was that a place, because this is going to be your home for the next 2 years now, so a place where you could really feel yourself. And I still remember going to one of these open days to ESA in Barcelona, and I instantaneously fell in love with the school and the city, and yeah, that was it.
I love the idea. I always think that it's, the potential applicant to business school then has that conversation with their partner that says, hey dear, I'm looking at heading to North America, or heading to the UK for 2 years. I hope you'll come with me. But in this case, it was your wife that was pushing you and pushing you to MBAs. I suppose it's a great shame, as Felix describes, that UNESCO heritage campus that the University of Virginia and Darden has. I mean, the Ogden Nash buildings at LBS, and now this exciting incubator space, that campus visits are not available, because for each of you it sounds like it was a key moment, all the more important that I think people get to hear your experience. Aya, we were saying just before we went live that you spend your days advising clients at Goldman Sachs on investments, and of course that long-term planning and the return on the investment. Ravi talked about the 2-year program and what that would give him. We can look at salaries, and the FT and others obviously do that, but what are we missing when we sort of say, okay, was it worth the investment? What are those sort of intangible, non-financial returns that have ultimately made such a difference to you?
By the way, I think that's a crucial question, because a question I give my applicants very often is, ultimately speaking, the MBA experience comes at a cost. Is the ROI worth it? And I always say, I mean, if we were to be super business school and do a DCF and say, right, is it positive at the end? You can do that, right? But to actually truly, and it comes down to the intangibles, to truly do an ROI on, and I can only speak for the LBS experience, you have to say, number one, is the experience while I'm there worth it? And I can say, in terms of the community that you pick up, and I say community a lot. I was in a class of 425, a smaller stream of 85, and a study group of 6. So a group is crafted out of your class, so that in the first year you do all of your assignments, projects, and you ultimately become a sort of mini family within the bigger family. But the school takes a lot of time crafting who ends up in your group and in your class. And I mean, down to the seat. In lectures, they ensure that you were sat next to someone who did not come from your country in every lecture, right? So in every discussion, it was truly international, it was truly diverse. And just to see how much time was taken to craft the experience, you come out and you truly have a global experience, even though it's in a single city. And on the ROI discussion, I say, well, ultimately speaking, the access to careers, Being in London meant, I could speak to potential employers, and I was fixed on banking. And there was a 6-month whirlwind where suddenly I was definitely going to be a consultant. Oh my God, tech sounds awesome. Because the access was suddenly there. And I eventually stuck to my guns, did the internship at Goldman, loved it so much. I said, I'm definitely coming back. But it's very hard to quantify what it means to suddenly have your horizons broadened. I mean, how do you put an ROI on that? And then you have where we are now, and this is we're all alumni, we're a few years past being in the school. And LinkedIn is phenomenal. But what LinkedIn also does is you regularly get the updates from your friends, and suddenly it's so-and-so got promoted and there's a job change. You're like, oh my God, you're now the manager of X, and I can recall our skiing trip, and I'm glad that but you see that your network of classmates are suddenly future leaders, and you hear this a lot on the program, but you start to see it come to life. And I'm only, now 3-4 years out. I am excited about my ROI in 10, 15, 20 years time. I mean, how do you put that into numbers? I mean, where will all my classmates be in 20 years? And if someone said to me now, with the knowledge that you have, would you pay again to go to LBS, knowing, how your life should look in the next 15, 20 years? I'd say take the money, absolutely. Because the ROI is so much bigger than just the job that you get. It's the access to the community and the opportunities that suddenly exist in your life going forward. And yeah, those are the intangibles that you cannot quantify in numbers.
We do talk about this sort of wonderful opportunity to explore. And Yizhen, I guess, having spent 7 months of your program in an international environment, so many corporate projects and that action-based learning. And at the same time, professors flying in from Cambridge, Massachusetts to join you. Was that the real eye-opener to then be exposed to all of these different industries and sort of stepping back after a successful career and saying, but there's so much more?
You're absolutely right there, Matt. For me, the real eye-opener was twofold. The first of which is, as you know, we had to do one project at a different corporate host in every semester. And those corporate hosts would range from companies like a Thai beer company who was trying to penetrate the competitive beer market in Hanoi. And we'd have to go to Hanoi and figure out how to best do that. I had my summer internship in Hong Kong. And in one semester, I also worked at a Thai bank to help them try and come up with a new social commerce strategy. So that was super exciting. So from what I could say, the first angle of the eye-opener experience for me was the ability to soak myself for 4 weeks in a foreign city with a completely unfamiliar business, trying to solve a real business problem for my corporate hosts. And that transcended industries, that transcended borders. So that was amazing. The second aspect to it was, the saying, right? Like you never truly know somebody until you live or travel with them. So in each one of these projects, I would be put in a group of 4. And it's much like what Ayo said about his experience at the LBS, whereby they always try to put you in groups where with people who with backgrounds completely different from yours. So you do get a real deep dive into diversity. And it's this sense of camaraderie that you build when you explore new cities and new businesses together. So that was truly phenomenal.
Right. Ayo had talked about, well, maybe consulting, but tech's cool too, and has ended up in finance. I think at Darden, Felix, you study as many as 320 cases. Someone once said, by the time you've finished all of those, you're ready to land on your feet. How does the case method and business school itself then translate for the entrepreneur, and how you can perhaps take these Fortune 500 cases you might be looking at and distill that and think, well, how does this apply to a business that you've started?
I think I apply what I've learned there every day. I think the difference to a lecture is I felt like I always tried to consume everything in 3 days before the exam and then forget about it right after. And the case study method is different because it doesn't like fill you up with unnecessary information. It kind of gives you the tools to attack a problem. And I think as an entrepreneur, as well as in any career, that's the daily life. You will never get a preset structure, and then they say like, please solve this problem. There's only one solution. It's always going to be an entrepreneurial mindset necessary, no matter in what management position you are. And I think the case study method throws you into cold water every time again. And in the beginning, it's kind of frightening, but when you like kind of get into it, it's so much fun. So I still look at cases today, like where I said, okay, I want to see what I learned from them. I feel like there's maybe one little story. I talked to my family on a family conversation, and we talked about some issue we wanted to discuss, and my two brothers contacted me after and were like, Felix, you've changed so much since business school. You framed the problem completely differently. You kind of attacked it, and then you organized it for us. They were really impressed. And I didn't even realize I was doing that. Like it came in so naturally after, because I think we have 100 case party at some point in the school. I think it's like 3 or 4 months already. And then with the second year, I think we even do up to 600 cases. But it becomes very natural, and it's a lot of fun. So I would never do anything else again for school if I had to choose.
Business school, we talked about other ways of looking at return on investment. If it's helping you to frame and manage those sometimes awkward family conversations, whether it's at Thanksgiving or at the holidays, and the uncle that's going to start talking politics, then it's done a world of good. Ravi, when we were speaking with Paula yesterday, the admissions director at IESE, and I said to her, what is it about the school that really makes it exceptional? I'm sure she could have taken hours to share so many details, but she talked about the mission of the school, a sense of values, purpose. The school is recognized for commitment to CSR and social responsibility. Is that something that you looked for? Or was it just sort of embedded in the program and accompanies you through the 2 years?
Really great question. Before that, just wanted to add to what Felix said. So at IESE, we did close to 500 cases over the course of 2 years, and completely agree with what Felix said. Is the case method gives you it doesn't really give you a prefix structure, right? Now, this is how the world business problems are going to be. But what it gives you is this tool set, right? So being exposed to close to so many cases, 500 cases, you are exposed to the different ways business problems could arise, and you are kind of better prepared than before. And coming to the question, yes, it was indeed one of the things I was looking for, because it's not just quantifiable success that you make as a leader, right? So as a leader, I think you need to really make your mark, and that is through earning the trust of those around you, of your peers, of your colleagues, of your subordinates, gaining empathy, and then being successful, right? So for me, what I was trying to gain was just beyond a diploma at the end of a 2 year, and then a mark that says that, oh yeah, he's probably fit to lead something, right? So no, I really wanted to get into knowing what it is to be a true leader, moving forward into the business world.
Mm. Yeah, the case method in the good old days when we held CentreCourt in sort of a face-to-face setting, we had an HBS professor. HBS, of course, one of the founding schools with IESE, and for me it was fascinating to watch the audience, and perhaps each of you was in this experience. I mean, those conversations, that discussion unravels so quickly, and cold calling, being ready, you better prepare your stuff. So all of these different skills at a personal level, and I'm sure, Ayo, you didn't subject all of your classmates to learn to play the trumpet for the years at London Business School. On that personal level, what do you think that you learned about yourself?
I mean, it's a good question, and I'd say and I think Ravi mentioned this earlier. I wanted 2 years in business school, and I was very specific about that. And the reason for that is there is a lot that happens at business school, and the first 3 months, and I'm sure everyone else can attest to it, you just get hit with an absolute mountain of just everything, and it's from assignments to suddenly, you know, wanting to run a student-led professional event and get external partners in, to suddenly, you know, I had a very close friend from Taiwan who organized a trip for 5 of us to go. He put together, as consultants do, a deck. We said, this is fantastic. Before you know it, 50 of us went to Taiwan because it was so organized. And there are so many parts of the course and the experience that you want to take on. But I think one of my biggest learning growths was actually just learning to understand what I wanted more. And it was learning how better to manage the priorities that I put in my life. Because suddenly it was, I want a new career that's available to me now. But I also want to meet all of these fantastic, amazing classmates that's available to me now. I want to learn everything there is to know about business technically, which is impossible to do in 2 years. But actually, there are all of these electives and I wish I could study them all, but I cannot. But it's available to me now. So actually it was, well, what's important to me as a person? Because everything is suddenly on the table. And I think pre-business school, it was always a, will I have the chance to, you know, potentially go into banking? Will I have the chance to learn the, you know, constructs of how to best think about strategy? Now it was, everything is here. It's not, you know, what do I want? It's what's the best for me. And I think it was a 2-year journey of really saying, well, what do I want to prioritize for my own personal growth? Because suddenly I've got access to all of it. And I think the first, and I say this every time, the first 3 months I said yes to everything. You learn very quickly it's unsustainable. So by term 2 and term 3, it was, you know, I really want an international experience away, even though London is my hometown. I'm going to ensure that I do one of the international school swaps. And I spent 3 months in Hong Kong, which was phenomenal because suddenly I had their lens of, you know, how to do business while also having the opportunity to explore Southeast Asia. And by the end of the second year, you found everyone was doing the same. So I did one internship over the summer, very happy, went back to school and I chose my electives, but had a very flexible schedule. For others, they did 3 to 4 internships. And it was for them, they wanted to explore different careers. And you have that over the 2-year period. So I think it was, I got to discover myself better prioritize, but the time and the flexibility gives you the opportunity to really discover what's important to you. And I think that was my biggest learning or growth point, if you like. I also learned how to ski for the first time in first term, and that was awesome.
Hey, if you learn to tackle gravity, that's a big. So if the Yizhen of day 600 of a 20-month program, more or less, there might have been a leap year in there, could speak to the Yizhen of day 1 and say, okay, now I'm at the end of the program. This is my advice to you on day 1. IO talks about sort of priorities. There's more things than, and you say yes to everything. What would your advice to yourself be if you were to start the MBA all over again?
Wow. Okay, that's such a great question, Matt. I would echo the theme that IO essentially articulated. At ASB, we essentially, on any given day, we would have 48 hours worth of stuff and opportunities crammed into 24 hours. And it's essentially a matter of prioritizing, right? And picking, you know, do I want to spend these 2 hours really working and refining this assignment, or getting on a coffee chat with a prospective recruiter, you know, or do I want to spend that 2 hours celebrating a birthday of a classmate? So it's these decisions that I had to make on a daily basis or on an hourly basis over the course of 20 months. And I think the advice I would have for my day 1 self would be treat every day as day 1, but know what you want to get from this program. And if you have a very clear view as to what you want to achieve, maybe the top 3 things you want to achieve from this program, by the end of that 20 months, you will have gotten it.
Right. And somewhere, if you can celebrate birthdays with the recruitment managers, then you're being doubly efficient.
We find
Felix,
ways to multitask.
as the European that shows up in Charlottesville, you know, we often have this image of that sort of self-confident American, you know, has no problem speaking up in class. Is there an adjustment? And you know, as we think about all of the international students that Darden and other top US business schools attract, sort of advice to the international student really to make a good landing?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the Americans are always very good at marketing themselves, which includes speaking. I love to talk in class. I think the conversations are what excites me, and to hear other people's opinions and get a conversation and discussion going. But there are definitely students that have to warm up to it. But I think the environment supports it. I agree with Ayo, and that like there's so much you can do in the beginning that I would have said to myself, calm down. There's a reason you're here. You'll find your way. I mean, for me, it was entrepreneurship from the beginning, which I'm thankful for. But there are so many other ways, the consulting track, the investment banking track, where that takes a lot of time. And my roommates, who was a drummer too, one of them, he did consulting, the other one did private equity. So I saw them working on their networking and everything. So in the end, you have to, like, you'll find your way. You'll make the best out of it if you just tell yourself that there's a reason why you're here, and you can get it done.
And in a very close-knit community, does that translate to, I mean, just listening to all four of you, you're all very talented, you have great accomplishments already to your name, but there's a lovely humility there too. I mean, the school kind of keeps you grounded, right? So it's confidence, but without attitude.
True. I mean, like for Darden, I've heard about other stuff in undergrad that there's kind of a competition between the students. And I feel like, as I said before, the support is what excites me. I still have a deep roots in the entrepreneurial ecosystem of Charlottesville as a whole. Even the whole town breathes Darden and University of Virginia. It's a small town environment, and you realize that you have come to a town that's all about the community experience. And I'm still in contact with professors, with alumni. Of course, I've made tons of friends. I'm not even sure if I can go to all the weddings internationally and if they happen. But I mean, all your classmates have done amazing things in their life, and the stories are all different. But that's what keeps you grounded. What helps you to also look left and right and see what alternatives are out there. I think we are all normally pretty set and narrow-minded in where we come from and where we wanted to go. And there have been people changing ways, changing professions, as Ayo said, and or just stuck to what they came from. And I mean, in the end, nobody can take the degree and the network from you anymore. And this is what makes it worth it.
Ravi, I'm sure that your wife will have some interesting perspectives on how she saw you change during this sort of 2-year leadership journey that you took at IESE. Same question as to Ayo. At that personal level, beyond discounted cash flow and other things that you've learned to master, holding up that mirror on a personal level, what do you think has emerged from the experience?
In short, to dare to do things that were unimaginable for myself if I were to look back at myself 5-6 years ago. So that's I would say one of the biggest accomplishments that I'm really proud about. As I said, coming from this background, wasn't really particularly an extrovert, so it took a huge amount of effort for me to put myself out there, to be networking in a way that is effective, which I, thanks to the school and thanks to my classmates and colleagues, I was able to really excel at the end of the program. So it's just one of the very few things. There are a lot, right? So entrepreneurship, for example, right? I ended up co-founding one startup and being a founding partner of a consulting firm, the deep science one that you mentioned at the beginning. I would have never imagined being that person 6 years ago. Absolutely no. So this experience, the MBA experience at IESE, provided me the toolkit and really implanted the sentiment, the sentiment of really being what is really successful. And it's not really the business world is really for those who really put their step forth and really dare to do things, right? And you could be really happy in your little nest, but that's probably not going to help you succeed. So you really dare, and then you go out there, and then you put your best effort. You succeed. If you fail, you get up and you learn from your failure, and then you try not to repeat it, and then you emerge as more successful.
Ayo, when it became clear to you, maybe as you graduated from Queen Mary's many years ago, that you weren't going to make it as a professional musician, I know, I'm sorry. If you contrast that, we come out of undergrad, think about next steps. We could keep going. We could do a master's degree. Some of you had that experience too, but you jump into the world of work. Do we really know at the age of 21, 22, where life is going to take us? So if you contrast that with then emerging from 2 years at London Business School, the doors that had opened clearly at Goldman Sachs, how would you sort of compare, and just the opportunities and the way that business school really then helps you to frame and pursue and open up all of these exciting doors?
Yeah, and I mean, you're correct. And I mean, even now people ask me, where will you be in 5 or 10 years? And again, if you'd asked me straight after undergrad, I think I thought I would have had a good idea. I'd be in finance, or I'd be in a sales function. I really enjoy the idea of just having client interaction. And I think the one thing that, especially LBS, in seeing what my classmates is doing, it's actually because now, and I'll use Ravi's term, right, we have learned to dream, and the opportunities do exist. I now know that the opportunities that will exist in 5 years or 10 years, I can't see yet today. Because those are doors that are going to open because I'm part of a special network, if you like. And I think being at LBS, it did 3 things. One was you had the cohort and you spoke to humility. And I think, everyone here has a phenomenal story. And what you find is, and what I found is everyone at LBS, their stories just made me feel so normal. I mean, I had a study group classmate who in his early 20s decided it was a great idea to lease an oil drill and start his own oil drilling company in his 20s. And I thought, well, I've just worked in Thomson Reuters. And it was the excellence taught me to say, right, actually, I don't know what 5 years looks like. All I can do is be excellent today. And that was my classmates to school. Of course, with the rich history and the connectivity it had to employers, suddenly, the doors to your top consulting firms in the McKinsey, the Bains, they would prep you to actually, and this is the career center, as to how best to apply for those roles. And the school taught you to open and broaden your horizons, irrespective of what original plan you had. And the last is the alumni network. And this is back to, I think, Felix mentioned this. Maybe it's because we are a one campus uni. I'd say very much has an institution. It's very community heavy. So when you reach out and people see the sort of you are ex-LBS, it's of course I have time for you. And actually, when you see what they're doing, you say, well, actually, maybe I could do that in 5 years. And I'd say, between classmates broadening your horizons and prepping you to get into certain jobs, the school career center, the structuring they have and the prep and the alumni connectivity, the ability to direct to any career path suddenly just becomes a lot clearer, a lot easier. And you become more confident and emboldened to almost dream to do things that you didn't think you would do 2 years prior. So I think that's how I think about it now. And yeah, if someone was to ask me, where will you be in 5 years? I'd say really good at my job now, bigger book. But who knows? I might be heading up a fintech wealth company. I have no idea. Let's see.
Hey, Brent oil hit $66 a barrel the other day. So maybe you need to reach out to the guy that bought himself an oil rig.
I'm definitely still in contact.
Yizhen, forgive a clumsy metaphor, but with a career that's flying high as an advisor to the CEO at Asia, if the last year has taught us anything, to expect the unexpected, to navigate such uncertain and volatile conditions. So, does the MBA then help you, whether you're in the airline industry, oil and gas, finance, to be able to step back and adapt and pivot?
Absolutely, Matt. In fact, I would go a little bit further and say that my experience at ASB has not only taught me to be adaptable, but it also taught me how to embrace pain and embrace uncertainty. And what I mean when I say embracing pain and uncertainty is it's not about avoiding the uncertainty or sort of like turning away or reducing it. It's about how do you equip yourself in an uncertain situation to be able to best address the outcomes that may potentially arise, right? So you would surround yourself with the right people, and B, you would do contingency planning. You'd map up the worst case scenarios, plan for that, and C, it's about galvanizing the people around you, telling them that there is light at the end of the tunnel, because this is probably the most interesting time in all of history to be joining an airline of all companies. Last year, I think we were going by a lot of hope, ups and downs. We were pivoting from being an airline to going to a super app, and that entailed a lot of ups and downs in the sense that we were oscillating from pivot mode to crisis mode to pivot mode to crisis mode, and that required a lot of comfort with ambiguity and a lot of comfort with not being in a stable status quo. So with an ever-changing environment that ASB had put us through, with all of our short-term projects, our classes modules that lasted 1 week long, so we were very much accustomed to never having the sands settled, so to speak.
Right. Yes, those ups and downs. It's not like entrepreneurs, Felix. They never see the ups and downs, right? Well, you're a co-founder, which already implies that at least two of you bring your complementary skill sets to GiftZap and your latest adventure. You spoke earlier about how good Americans can be at marketing themselves. If we take you back a few years and you had to market yourself to Darden to secure your place in one of the top schools, what would your advice be in distilling all of this background, your studies, your story, GMAT scores, all of those different things? What is your advice to an applicant, and the things they should hold on to as they go through this admissions process?
I think what helped me is that I did two things. I really asked myself why I wanted an MBA. Could be that you wanted to learn the language, you wanted to challenge yourself academically, grow your network, get the study experience, so on and so on. And then I think everybody can answer that for themselves. And that I think if you analyze the schools, you'll quickly find out which ones fit that particular skill set that you're looking for from the school. That's how I narrowed it down and said, okay, Darden is a very good fit. And I think then you just have to be authentic, because in the end, you want to fit into the school as well. And you're only going to feel comfortable if you were authentic during the application process. And I think that worked pretty well for me, because I could honestly say that I wanted to go to this place, and that's, I think, why it worked out. And I feel like if you're very convinced, then you put up enough effort to make it happen as well. So I think that was my way of preparing.
Right. Ravi, the Indian male engineer in the applicant pool is I think we can say it's a well-represented demographic. But then subsequent studies in the Netherlands, and then an application to business school that gives you the chance to move away from grading systems of Artmann and the IITs, and really share your story. I mean, did you feel that you had the chance to embrace this opportunity? And as Felix said, it's not worrying about what does the admissions committee want to hear, but what do I have to share in the authenticity of your story?
Yeah, I think that's a good point, and that is quite crucial. And I would say, yes, you need to be really authentic in the story that you convey. And even before that, the question that you ask yourself, as Felix said, is how do you define success right? So if you really believe that a program like an MBA is going to help you go from point A to point B, how is that point B look like? And am I sure that a program like MBA is the only way that I'm going to reach this? If I'm not true to myself about this, then it might probably not work. I'm being completely honest there. And the second thing is, yes, in terms of applications, being true and authentic in bringing out the stories, and in really being honest in terms of, look, this is where I want to be. This is my definition of success, and I am prepared to embrace change. And as long as this is going to be true, I think the admissions committee, doesn't really matter if you belong to this oversized pool or not. I think they're always willing to listen to your stories, right? And then believe in you as you believe in yourself.
Right. Speaking with David Simpson, the head of admissions at London Business School, that they've had an avalanche of applications this year. Typical counter cycle. Everyone wants to go back to business school, so much so they had to postpone sending out interview invites after round one, just to be able to read all of these applications. So, viewers are thinking, hey, I went to LBS. Maybe it was easy to get into LBS 5 years ago. I'm sure it wasn't, but certainly it's a very selective market. So, do we need to kind of sort of abstract all of those hundreds, thousands of other applicants, and as you sit down, as you work with recommenders, perhaps even advice for approaching recommenders, what do you think really matters most to share in the application?
And by the way, just on the selection process, and I can share this, but it's too late now. I'm here. LBS actually hand read every single application that comes through. There is no auto. So this is all to say, and I think both Felix and Ravi said this, really communicate your story. And when I think to what truly makes you stand out of the thousands of applicants, it's to understand what the business school wants from you. And to that I say, when you're in a lecture hall or in a class, yes, there is the lecturer and the faculty at LBS is great, so the content is very great, but you learn from your classmates. When we did case studies and the answers would start to come from the lecturer, actually it was someone who had worked in oil that could speak to the oil case study, and it was someone who had worked in the film industry who could speak to us. And you spent an entire class just listening to classmates and learning from them. So I say, when you apply, it's not just what do you want from business school, because a good business school, and LBS can grant you the things that you want. It's what will you truly bring? And everyone has a story. And, I think when I speak to applicants now, they say, but I'm not so interested. And I say, well, you're here and you've made it to this point somehow in life. You have a story and there are lessons that you have learned. How can I learn from your lessons? And I think we just take time to say, what lessons have I learned from the industry that I've been in, from the life journey that I've been on, and how will this contribute to someone else? And also know how you will contribute to the school. I think I had a very clear idea as to how the school could help me, and that was through my career transition. But I also had a very clear idea as to what communities I wanted to help. And I had a clear idea as to my study group. I'd studied the CFA, so for anyone who was struggling in finance, I was more than happy to, walk through accounting, even though I absolutely hate it. I was happy to walk through accounting with them, or corporate finance, which I do enjoy. And I knew how I would contribute. And I think sometimes people forget to highlight, yes, the school is good for you. Yes, LBS can help you get to where you want to get to, but how do you plan and what part of your journey is useful for everyone else? And if you really lock into that and you can communicate that clearly, then you become an attractive person, not just to the school, but to your future cohort.
Right. If we go back 12 years, MIT Sloan, the M7 schools, they maybe had 31% women in the MBA classroom. They didn't have many lawyers either. Yizhen, just as you think about bringing down those barriers and saying, I'm going to invest in myself, take this step. So whether, to any women that are watching this particular panel, but to anyone about to take that leap of faith, what would be your sort of final words of encouragement to them?
Just do it. Just do it. Take that leap of faith, because at the end of the day, the only person you can trust is yourself. So just do it. Have a clear story, have a clear direction, and what you might want to get out of your business school experience. And if you are very clear with what you want and who you are, it will shine during your admissions interview, and the interviewers will see it. So just go for it.
Right. Felix, if we look at the graduates at LBS and IESE and INSEAD and other top European business schools, a handful start their own business as they come out of school. They've got incubators, lots of opportunities, and the internships that they can spend. But it really kicks in 5 to 10 years out, and suddenly you see half of the LBS graduating class has started a business. Now you've done it the other way around. You've come out of business school and you've got Gifts app. So what does 5 years from now look for you?
I mean, for most entrepreneurs, they either stay entrepreneurs for the rest of their lives, I think, because it's hard to give up once you have fallen in love with it. The roller coaster life is not for everyone, but it's definitely exciting. I'm trying to already give back during I've been working in venture capital world in a family office for the last 7 years. So we've been investing in startups as well. I would love to have my own VC fund, help other people start companies. I've been reaching out to a lot of students at Darden as well. I'm still in contact with a teacher there, Dave DeVito. He leads a venture velocity class. So there's a cohort of new startups coming out of the school. I've been a mentor there. So I'm in close contact with companies coming out of the school still. So if I can keep doing that, and I'm not even sure on which side of the table, investing or being an entrepreneur, that would be my dream.
Yeah, well, dream big. And Ravi, we've seen the appetite that took us back 10, 12 years ago to look at gender balance in the MBA classroom. But Fung and the tech giants, they weren't big recruiters, sort of pre-Lehman and the financial crisis. And now Amazon's got this voracious appetite for talent coming out of the top schools. Where do you see yourself in the next 5 years?
It's a tough one. On one hand, I agree with Felix. Once you're an entrepreneur, it's really difficult to not see yourself as one at a certain point of your life. So that could definitely be something on the table. But at the moment, as you said, tech companies like Amazon are growing huge, right? So, and with it comes a lot of challenges, right? That the objectives are quite clear. How do we keep growing while making sure we offer the best customer services, customer experience? So I think there is a lot to achieve. Companies like Amazon are growing, not just growing, they are diversifying in many areas, which means that there are a lot of opportunities for a profile like me to start at one place and really go to another one, and and also grow professionally and from a role perspective, right? So lots of opportunities out there, I would say.
Great. Well, I wish you well in those. And just coming back to a comment that Io made at the beginning, just in terms of how the alumni community were available to him when you were applying to business school. This is true of all of you, at Darden, at IESE, at the Asia School of Business, and then thoughts about how you can give back. I have enjoyed the last 60 minutes so much in terms of your generosity, your insights, the passion for the experience that you've had, even how you're helping us to think about things beyond, post-MBA salary 3 years out, whether you're running that Glastonbury or Montreux festival, IO, 5 years from now, and if Gifts app becomes the next unicorn, or when, Bezos has stepped down, who knows who the next CEO will be, and Yizhen, clearly your comfort level with the C-suite. All four of you, thank you for a wonderful panel, for joining us, and you've done your schools proud.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
It's been a pleasure.